My name is Roy Maloy. I'm a true crime author and historian. Thanks for interviewing me, Nick. It's good to be on your show. What drew me to producing Vendetta 19 in the first place was the fact that the stories that I've published over so many years with the 15 different books all intersect really heavily. And they're not books that you would think, or they're not narratives that you think should intersect. When we're looking at something like the story of the Crutchy Push from the 1890s, and then the story of Squizzy Taylor, which starts off in about 1907, the story of Bridget Mahoney, who was one of the most prolific sly grog manufacturers in Australian history, or the story of Minnie Clark, who was, again, one of the most prolific brothel-running madams in Australian history. They all heavily intersect and they converge on the 1919 Fitzroy Vendetta. So when I published all those books, it seemed like a natural progression to bring them all together in one piece. Now, I could write that up as another book, or I could be a little bit more adventurous. When I met Gracie Kay and Stuart, these guys are incredible with their production skills, and it just seemed like a natural fit to make it into a television series. Vendetta 19 is somewhat different to other shows that have been produced like it, and I guess you could put in that category Peaky Blinders, Boardwalk Empire, or the Underbelly series. And it's different from them in a few ways. First of all, being a specialist in true crime and also daily life history is something I'm pretty committed to. So being able to capture the parlance and the way people actually spoke is really important to me. Costumes and not overdoing it to create a Hollywood version of the story is what I'm all about. So it's a real story told the real way. I couldn't say that I have what would be termed as a favourite true crime story. I've got to always make sure that people understand I don't glorify crime. I don't try and sensationalise the criminals or make them into celebrities. Generally speaking, they're pretty bad people. I worked in jails for a long time, maximum security with highly violent offenders. But at the same time, I think the truth that we have as human beings is understanding who we are against the background of who we're not. And so the stories I'm telling are also being told to better understand the effects of trauma, understand who we are, and also understand that the stories have been wrongly told in the past. And my main motivation is to retell them with truth. Now, in Aboriginal culture, we use the word Yuruk, which means to tell the truth. And generally speaking, in the 1920s, these stories were told by white, Anglo-Saxon, heterosexual, male, and Christian backgrounded journalists, and they whitewashed from the story all the minority groups that included women, children, disabled people, people of colour, other nationalities, queer people, and people who just didn't fit that same trope of being white, male, and bigger the better. So I think my main motivation for this is to present these stories with truth. In regards to how accurate the story is, I would give it probably an 80 to 85% accuracy. To need to bend the story depending on what's available to you. So we're going to be filming a scene that shows Dolly Gray out the front of her house and she needs to interact with somebody on a street. Now, filming that means we've got to show a street that has no bitumen. Now, I'm on pavement right here, right? That wouldn't have been there. This gutter here is a better indication. That would have been all the way across the street. Right, so we had to find a house where there was a laneway next to it with cobblestones to film that on, otherwise we couldn't have used it. So, the house itself is time period accurate, but it's not like the house she lived in. So you do have to be willing to flex a little bit. We can't obviously use the exact house she had. It's been demolished. But with that in mind, there's little things like the word hello doesn't come into our vernacular until after telephones. So these people weren't walking into a room saying hi or hello. They're saying good morning, good afternoon, morrow, or sometimes naval expressions like hoi hoi. And it's hard to imagine a big tough gangster walks into a room and says hoi hoi, But that's how it is, But moving forwards, there's plenty of stories that need to be told. There's Chinese stories about the opium dens and about the racket in Chinese lotteries that were huge in Melbourne. There's bushranger stories. There's a huge amount of stories. It just comes down to being able to write it the right way and produce it in a way that is contemporary and authentic. As for who I am and why I find myself in this position in the first place, I couldn't read a word till I was 19. I wasn't raised with some of the luxuries that other people are, and I didn't find the school or education system easy. So at the age of 19, I taught myself how to read. And my passion for telling the story, the narrative, and just learning from other people through that exchange of storytelling is what I'm all about, and I love that. Hearing other people's stories, and I just encourage other people to use this moment in time where you've got a handheld device that you can use for storytelling purposes. I've written, what is it now, 13 of my 15 books exclusively on my phone. And so too can you. Use Google Docs. You've got access to things like Trove, the internet, and the world's your oyster in that way. So I highly encourage everybody else to get on board, tell your story. I had sat on this project for 4 years after I wrote it. So to be clear, I've written 9 seasons of a TV show, and now we're just looking for the backing body, somebody like Netflix, Stan, ABC, SBS, one of those who'll pick it up and say, look, here's the means to make this into a proper production. So I sat on it for a number of years, just looking for that time, that place where I meet the person who has the professional skill and prowess to make this happen. Gracie Kay is absolutely phenomenal. She's a force of nature, and she's the one who has brought all this together. So couldn't be more grateful for that. Otherwise, it would still be sitting in my Google Docs.